This is the story of Red Ash Cemetery. Red Ash Cemetery is found in Caryville, Tennessee. It is one of the most haunted locations in Tennessee. It is a coal town that depleted. And some say the locals still roam the cemetery at night. Some have seen ghostly apparitions roaming. The surrounding area is said to be haunted also, with a railroad track reported to be the most active. People have seen mysterious blue lights, an apparition of a man in the coal towers who reportedly fell from the towers, and you may just hear his wail. A woman crying over her own grave, and if she sees you, she will chase you off the site. There are two female spirits on the train tracks you may see. One is a young girl that was killed by a train, and another is of a pregnant woman murdered on the bridge. There are many reports of other figures and apparitions chasing people off of the property. People have bad feelings when they enter the area. Others say they have seen an 8-foot tall, half goat, half man demon that wanders the cemetery at night.
In Jamestown, Tennessee, at Pinehaven School, a young boy who was not very popular was going to the bathroom and washing his hands. No one else was in there, and some of the school bullies came in and decided to play a prank on the boy. They went up behind him and shoved him into the mirror. But when his head bashed into the mirror, it shattered and a piece of glass cut his throat. The boys did not mean for it to happen and watched the boy bleed to death on the floor. The boys did not want to get caught, so they tore up the floorboards and stuffed the body into it and covered it. The school is now abandoned, and if you go to the bathrooms and look in the mirror, you see the little boy behind you in the mirror. He might shove you in the mirror and kill you, and drag you into the floorboards.
This is the story of Skinned Tom. Young love is a beautiful thing while in Tennessee 1920s. The boys loved to take the girls to Lover's Lane for date nights. A young man named Tom found himself a girl and drove her up to Lover's Lane one night. Tom thought this date was going really well, but was not aware that this woman was married until her husband found them. The girl's husband killed her, then drug Tom from his car and skinned him alive and left him there. When the police arrived, they only found a pile of skin. Tom was furious. Now his spirit haunts Lover's Lane, and his skinned body roams the area with a long knife, seeking revenge on those who cheat and commit adultery.
From White Bluff, Tennessee comes the legend of the White Screamer. In the 1920s, a husband and wife moved to the area with their 7 children. But every night they noticed strange happenings, and a terrible screeching and wailing would come from the terrified family. Finally, the man became enraged by the occurrence and ran into the woods looking for what was making the screaming. As it became louder and shriller, he discovered it was not just one, it was many. But when he returned, he discovered his family had been hacked to pieces, and their body parts were all across the house. Some believe it was actually a banshee, a monster that follows families, foretelling death.
Legend of the Bell Witch. The legend of the Bell Witch is one of the most famous legends coming from Tennessee. The Bell family moved to land in Adams, Tennessee in 1804. John Bell and his family owned a lot of land around the area. One of the neighboring land was the Batts family. Kate Batts lived there with her husband Fred Batts, who was injured and unable to work. So Mr. Batts started selling parts of their land. John Bell bought land from the Batts family. Fred Batts was willing to get any money he could to support his family, so John took advantage of this and bought the land for very cheap. And he did not pay what it was worth. When Kate found out about this, she was angry that John did this to her husband and swore that she would make the Bell family pay for this. She was angry, and a few years after this, around 1817, Kate died, and the Bell family started having strange things happen around the house. Betsy and John were tormented. They were slapped in the night until their faces were red, scratched, and pinched. The other children said they heard rats chewing at their bedposts and their blankets were jerked off the bed at night. The family would hear a woman singing through the house at night. The tormenting got so bad that the Bell family asked for help from their neighbors, and the spirit identified itself as Kate Batts. The Bell family situation started spreading, and the people would come to see the spirit, but after being there for a short time, ran in terror and named her the Bell Witch. The spirit grew so famous that Andrew Jackson heard about it and decided to come see for himself. Andrew gathered a party of men to go stay at the house, and when Andrew and his party neared the house, their wagon stopped in the road and would not move, despite the horses trying to move it. Andrew joked and said, "By the eternal, boys, it's the witch." Then they heard a shrill voice coming from the woods saying, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight." The men looked all around but could not find where the voice came from, so they went on their way and the wagon began to move again. The men heard Betsy Bell scream all night from her hair being pulled and pinched and the blankets being yanked off of her bed. The men then got up early in the morning and ran from the house, Andrew saying, "I would rather fight the entire British army than stay one more night in the Bell house." In 1820, John grew very ill, and a couple of months later he was found dead in his bed. His son, John Jr., found a vial of liquid next to his father's bed, and John Jr. gave some to the cat. When they did this, they heard a shrill voice yell through the house, "I gave old Jack a big dose of that last night, which fixed him." The cat quickly became sick and died in just a few hours. The Bell Witch left in 1821 after that, saying she would be back in 7 years. She kept her promise and returned to John Bell Jr.'s house for a short time, then left again, saying she'd be back in 107 years. That would be 1935, but no one reported anything happening. Many locals claim the witch still lives in the cave on the Bell land, and they see strange things around the cave and capture orbs on their cameras, now naming it the Bell Witch Cave. The Bell Witch remains one of the most famous haunted stories in the South to this day.
On the private property in East Tennessee, the mansion was built in the Ghost Bride of Rotherwood Mansion. On a private property in East Tennessee, the mansion was built in 1818 by Frederick Ross, in what is now known as Kingsport. Frederick had a daughter named Rowena. She was beautiful, kind, smart, and loved by everyone. So everyone was very happy to hear when she had fallen in love with a young man from outside the city. But on the day of the wedding, Rowena's husband's boat capsized, drowning him in the Holston River. Rowena was broken and never the same, but a few years later she married again. Then her husband died of yellow fever. She married again and had a little girl, but the little girl died very young. Rowena was completely broken, suffering from heartache from all that she had lost. After that, Rowena committed suicide. And then the lady in white started appearing on the property. Now she wanders the riverside. Many say she was looking for her first love that drowned, and will not rest until she finds him.